the situation in the security sector a reflection of what's on the society generally?
Generally, the sector, it doesn't even exist anyway. I like to say security sector because it's my dream that one day before I die, just like we have health sector, we have education sector, we'll be able to have a security sector. We don't have one. But then let's just continue to pretend we do. You see, the security sector, as you said, is one that is so wide, so complex. The armed forces, even if we had 6 armies, cannot handle all of it.
But it's not just about the army right now. We have the police, we have the Civil Defense Corps, we have the DSS, which is supposed to handle internal. We have the paramilitary, we have the immigration, we have the customs and all of that. Are you saying all of this is not enough working with the military to ensure security in the country? Why is that so?
That's why I'm telling you that if you put all these uniforms, there are so many these days that they even confuse you. There are so many, some of them are so replicated that you wonder exactly what is happening. So it's like having too many people in a room struggling to go through one door. What do you get? You get confusion. You get confusion. What I'm simply trying to put to you is this. Even if we have the armed forces, 6 armies, 1 army per geopolitical zone, and we had all of those paramilitary institutions, and there were no results, there was no line of sight, there was no what you call performance and task trajectory, you will have a lot of people busy doing nothing. How do you begin to measure results? Just walk on the street and ask one Nigerian to score his sense of securedness on a scale of 10. Try to put everything you ever worked for in this world, and I'm talking about your children and wife now. Try to put them in a car and drive to your village by road. I know you won't do that. That's the litmus test. So all the badges, all the ranks, all the meetings, they're just, for me, smoke screens.
So when we look at what has happened in Malari in Borno State, just recent attacks,
yes,
and also in Benue State, we've also had some conflict and attacks also there, people being killed. Is Operation Realstone and Operation Lafia Dole, are they still working?
That's what I'm saying. Operation Realstone, Lafia Dole, call it what you like. It's not about the operation, it's about the results. They are not. Let me tell you something very, very simple so that people can, connect with what I'm saying. If Operation Lafia Dole or any of those security encumbrances we have in the name of solutions, or even SARS, if that was a product that came off a manufacturing line, and you had concerns from people saying that product is defective, that product is toxic, that product is dangerous for consumption, what happens? You take it off the shelf, you call it back. Totally recall. There is no sin in recalling some of these things and putting something else out there. That's the results-driven passion I'm talking about here. Let every single component of every single operation understand there's nothing personal here. It's about results. You're either going to give me results or you are going to give me results. That's 2 choices. Very democratic, isn't it? Cool. So just go there. You drew out your task. You told me what you can do. You told me the resources you required. I've given you all of those. Then dance. If you don't dance, sorry, you're out. I mean,
If we're looking at a situation where the Inspector General of Police said that he will deploy security details just about everywhere in the country to protect people, lives and property during this Salah celebration. Do you see that coming into that point where people feel confident to travel on the road? Because even coming to work this morning, So many people on the road trying to travel. Are they safe?
I said Chamberlain, sorry. Gimba, don't be deceived. He can't. I tell you, he can't. You know how big this country is? He can't. Period.
Okay, let's toss it over to Abuja. I understand that Ajuri has a question for you. Ajuri.
Yep, thank you, Gimba. Yes, Captain, I've been able to listen to your submissions, and I just want to ask you, obviously in view of yesterday's meeting between the Commander-in-Chief and the security chiefs, we saw one small difference. Some would say it might be a major difference, but the Director General of the DSS is now a new person, and the former DG of DSS is now not there. And I want to ask you, in view of reports that the former Director General of the DSS, Lawal Dawar, was starving the Office of the National Security Advisor critical information concerning intelligence within the DSS, and that he essentially stopped having meetings that were customary before his tenure between the DG's office within the DSS and the state directors of the DSS. There have been concerns about how that affected intelligence gathering, and as a result, how operations were conducted on the ground. In view of that change, do you think that there is going to be a marked shift in terms of how these kind of multifarious challenges around the country will now be confronted?
It's left to be seen whether there will be a change or not. It's left to be seen, and I'll tell you why. The Lawan Dawaras of this world are not new to us. They've been there. We've just not taken time to do what I want to call a retrospective analysis of situations in the country. Let me give you 3 examples. Once upon a time, there was an officer who did not pass exams. Because he was favored and pampered, he rose to the top. But you know what? Later on, the very person who pleaded for him to be retained in that system paid with his life. It's history now. Next, we had another one. He was also pampered. And he got so pampered, he became so ruthless. Even his seniors were afraid of him. The third one is the one you are seeing in the ex-boss of the DSS. You see, if we begin not to run systems on meritocracy, and we run systems on godfatherism, that your child whom you say must not cry, he will make you cry one day. It's simple. We have people who are virtually spoon-fed in the system. When I was in service, I used to know a senior officer who never commanded an artillery regiment, but he rose to be a governor. So what's the point being in the artillery if you never commanded the smallest unit in the artillery? It's not only in the armed forces. The armed forces is a microcosm of Nigeria. And there's something they say, monkey see, monkey do. So what you do as legislators, executive, and judiciary is what the soldiers will do. Let people be known by the stripes they carry, and let them end those stripes. Go ahead, please.
Captain, when you look at some of the conditions around the country, we've heard from various stakeholders involved in terms of their assessment of what's going on around the country. We've heard from the Zamfara State Governor, Governor Yari, who before, of course, infamously said, look, I'm not really the chief security officer of my state, given the fact that I don't control a security outfit. He is now saying that the federal government has really stepped up, that he's happy with the war on the bandits and the relative reduction in the killings there. You're hearing this, we're seeing a reduction in the herdsman killings. Do you acknowledge that that is progress, or what do you attribute some of these changes to?
What I want to acknowledge is it's a trend with us to let 1,000 die, then we step things up, and then somewhere along the future you hear it's back to where it used to be. It's not new, okay? If you really want to talk about Zamfara, Ajuri, let's do this in 2 years' time. It's too early to say they have stepped things up and things are going. Let's wait a while. Okay, 2 years may be far flung. Let's do it in 6 months' time. Sustainability is key. Now that we are in election transition period, I want to believe all these things for me are smokescreens. They are palliatives. They are, how do I call it now? What do I call it? But if these things can be sustained up to December 31st, then probably I'll begin to take the measures seriously. Because as I told you, it's expensive business out there.
I'm just wondering, because the last couple of days, we've heard the Katsina Commissioner of Police say, look, they need members of society to volunteer information to them so that they can curb, at the time it was about some armed robbery and rape cases. And then we also heard the acting DG say, look, they will review some of the human rights cases, the questions that they've got. So in consideration of those comments coming through from the people, and we also know that volunteering information on the part of the people to security is almost like the fuel for them to succeed to a large extent. So from your perspective and from what you've seen, and putting those comments of theirs, does that suggest a willingness for the security outfits or agencies to be willing to let the people trust them to the extent that they can volunteer information? And do you see a response from the people as a result of those kind of comments coming through from them?
For a start, I want you to understand something. If your son comes to you and tells you everything that happens to him in school, he does it for a reason. He has confidence, trust, and believes in you. Can we really say that for the police force? Why do our police chieftains deceive themselves? Can you really, honestly say the average Nigerian is willing to walk to any police officer, including the IG, and share information without fear that something, some form of reprisal, something could go wrong? Can the police rebrand and market itself? Is it a taboo for this Nigerian police force under Idris Abubakar to call in marketing consultants to just do one or two things about their image? You think I, as a villager, will actually carry myself and go and tell the policeman in my village, in those remote outlands of this country, that policeman who probably shows up in the station once a week?
Is it about the image or the content?
All of it. Because even if it had the best content in the world and it had very poor imagery, you're not going to see any confidence building. And one more thing about sharing information. You see, intelligence is useless if the man you're offering it to is not intelligent. So if we were to take one policeman, and I'm not talking about the high-end policeman, I'm talking about the low-end policeman. If we were to take one man and enter his mind and his head, what is there? Even if you gave him the best information, is he equipped mentally, psychologically, and even technically to use the information you were given? Sharing information shouldn't be a buzzword, for God's sake. Sharing information comes with the presumption that the average policeman has the 9 basic intelligences that come with every human being when he's born. Okay? The 9 of them. I'm not going to go into that lecture here, but anybody can tell you that. Any serious intelligence operative can tell you that. And if you don't have those 9 seated in you, then how do you even begin to interact with information and put them together and make sense of them? These things are not magic. Okay, these things are not magic. The kind of police force we have, if you stepped out of Nigeria and pretended you were just coming from another country, you'll be embarrassed, and it's the truth. We are saying this not because we don't like the police force, but because in our heads we're dreaming and yearning for better. It can be better with the kind of monies we hear being voted. It can be, in fact, we should have the best police force in Africa. But that's not the case. And it's not because of the men. The men go to the United Nations and other foreign operations and do creditably very well. So what will the problem be is the leadership. Most of these leaders you see as heads of security agencies are just on their pre-retirement plan. Most of them want to retire comfortably. And if any one of them thinks I've made a false statement, I dare him to say so and approve it.
Captain Aliyu, the submission so far pointing to a need for a drastic shake-up in the entire system. How would that be?
Oh, yes. People tend to say, how will that be?
No, how?
That's what I'm saying. Whenever you talk about these things, some people cringe. They say, look, if we already have them and they're not doing well, if we decide to scrap them, that means hell will break loose. And I said, no, it cannot get any worse. You see, Cyprus woke up one morning and scrapped their police force. They're still on the world map today and doing far better than we are. We can. Listen, there are 102 million able-bodied Nigerian boys and girls between the age of 18 and 34. Last time I checked with the National Bureau of Statistics.
Okay, Captain, can you just hold your thoughts?
Yes.
We'll take a moment, we'll go on break, and we'll come back to continue the conversation on the how. Please don't go away.